All right, good morning, Doug. We got questions from subscribers to Crisis Investing, but first, some big news stuff to talk about, I think, and want to get your take on Iran. It seems like we've kind of crossed that threshold where military action is almost certain at this point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they have at least two carrier groups hanging around the area. But the question I have is they had six carrier groups hanging around when they invaded Iraq. But then again, uh, even Trump isn't so boldly stupid that he would actually launch a land invasion on Iran. Well, it impresses me as likely a good way to have those two carriers sunk and other naval assets. So, what's he hoping to accomplish? And why is Iran being attacked? They're absolutely zero threat to the United States, although obviously Netanyahu would like to see Iran taken out because it's the only threat to Israel. So, Trump is Israel's puppet at this point. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it seems that way. And you know, the funny thing is, there's no congressional involvement, and you don't even hear any outcry from Congress people about it either. It's like
That
they've totally let it all go. Oh yeah, we're supposed to decide where to go to war, but we're just ignoring that now.
You're absolutely right. You'd think that somebody would raise a flag and say, wait a minute, this is a major deal against a big country, not just a little dog shit country like invading Grenada or something of that nature. This is a big deal. And nobody's talking about that at all. Trump doesn't have the right to start what could turn into a major war because the Iranians are lined up with the Russians and the Chinese and getting a lot of weapons from them. And it could spin out of control quite easily.
Right. It's just this. There's a total surrender to executive power. It seems. You know, like Congress sucks. I mean, I don't know how to explain it.
They're completely worthless. They only get elected in order to grift once they're in office and pass out favors so that they can cash in after they're out of office, if not while they're in office, like Pelosi demonstrated, among others.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. Well, so it seems like the plan is just shock and awe, and try and blow up as much stuff as possible and leave the country, what, hopefully decapitate the leadership and leave it in like completely broken so it turns into Syria, I guess. I mean, I guess that's the plan.
I guess the ideal scenario is that the different ethnic groups that constitute Iran, because it's only 50% uh, ethnic Persians, the rest are Afghans and Azerbaijanis and Arabs and Kurds and what have you. So if it breaks up into a bunch of little countries, there won't be any possible threat to Israel anymore at that point.
Hmm.
So anyway, we have absolutely no business whatsoever messing around there. And I think there's an excellent chance that if Trump launches a real attack, uh, an air attack, missile attack against Iran, Iran will counterattack, and our naval assets, including those two carriers, are genuine risk. And Israel is really going to get beat up as well.
What are the chances that somebody uses a nuke in this situation?
Hmm. Well, only Israel has nukes, they say.
They and we.
Yeah, right. This is just, you know, this thing will have to be resolved eventually because technology keeps advancing. And, as long as Israel's there, there's going to be problems, I
Right.
think.
Right. Well, yeah. So so you'd place the odds of this actually happening at well, like what are the chances that it does go forward at this point in your mind? Seems certain to
Well,
me, but I don't know.
from what I read, the Iranians aren't about to back down when it comes to doing what they're told. Uh, in essence, disarming and otherwise doing what they're told. So Trump has to do something because you can't put all those assets someplace and then have them go away without getting something for the effort. So the odds are extremely high, I'd say, of
Yeah, I
something.
mean, I was reading some stats on the F-22s, and it's like there's 40 hours of maintenance for every flight hour. So imagine all the maintenance that is going to be that required on those aircraft simply just to get them over there. And they've moved over many squadrons of them. So, but it'll probably be the single largest, air assault ever. It seems like it's going to take it to a whole new level.
Yeah, and all of the ships will launch Tomahawk missiles, which is kind of like the go-to uh, short-range missile, and those go for $3 million a piece. That's actually $3 million. Well, that's a lot of money.
Not
And
only that, but to recreate them, we require rare earths we cannot get.
yeah, I can't wait to see what happens. Well, I really would like to just turn off the news because here on the farm in Uruguay, not so far from where you are, although you're in Brazil right now, uh, we're about as safe and insulated and isolated from that stuff as we can get. So why am I cluttering my mind up with it? Uh, anyway,
Well, that's a good point. I mean, truthfully, why clutter your mind with any of this stuff? For entertainment purposes, I guess, a little bit, and you know, yeah, that's about the only reason it can justify it, I think, at this point.
monitoring the news is just about bad things that are happening to people that you don't know on the other side of the world. That's what the news is. So it's bad karma, actually. And you shouldn't expose yourself to bad karma. I mean, there are things that are meaningful right in front of us. So I'm ashamed of myself. But anyway, having said that,
Yeah. Okay. Well, a couple other news items. You wanted to talk about the Washington Post. What was it about that?
well, as an ex-Washingtonian myself, having lived there for many years, I've always subscribed to the Post. And especially living here in Uruguay, they offered a $10 annual subscription. Uh, so I said, okay, that's cheap enough that I just can't pass it up. So I've been subscribing to it for years. But then you'll recall when Bezos told them that they couldn't endorse Kamala, they lost something like 300,000 subscribers, which kind of broke the back of their subscription model, I think. And then what happened next? Uh, a lot of the newsroom resigned because Bezos told them that they can't like be a local edition of the Daily Worker, which it was comical. I mean, before the election, I used to read the Post for amusement because these people were absolutely nutball crazy leftists. So a bunch of them left, and now a bunch more. What are the statistics on this?
Well, they announced some recent layoffs. It's total one-third of their staff was laid off, but the newsroom cuts are really substantial. It's that's roughly 45% of the total newsroom. So all the journalists was cut in the most recent round of layoffs, which leaves them with, I believe, what is the number? Like roughly 425 journalists in the newsroom still.
Which is hard to explain in that they also, I understand, have cut coverage of sports and local news and books. So what the hell are all those people doing there? Especially since most of the news is picked up from places like Reuters and AI and not AI, but UP and
AP.
AP, right? So there's a lot of
Yeah,
facts.
it's interesting because yeah, you have some like really prolific bloggers, who write every single day. And what are these? What are the? I mean, how many original articles do they produce a day at the Post? Is it 30 even? I'd be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. My guess is that, well, if Bezos is smart, and he is smart, I guess, AI will do most of the paper. in the future.
Yeah, I wonder how much it's doing right now. You got to
Yeah.
imagine it's contributing in some way.
Well, reading the Post, it's like a normal paper at this point. It has a mildly left of center editorial policy, but it's not rabid as it was a year ago. I mean, it was outstandingly rabid a year ago. Now it's just like an ordinary paper. So,
Yeah, which from a business standpoint, you gotta like wonder if it's they can survive like that because they lost a big part of their market, and if they're just the same as anything else, I mean, will they even survive?
might as well just subscribe to the New York Times, which has a notably more leftist bent than the Post does, which is quite a
Right,
change. So,
right. And you also had something about the scouts you wanted to.
well, I've monitored the Scouts since I was a Scout. Um, and since they merged, kind of, I guess, with the Girl Scouts, it's now Scouting America, not the Boy Scouts of America. So I went on their website to see how woke it had become. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised that it wasn't, from the looks of their website anyway, not noticeably woke. They still have, all of the Scout motto and all this. That's all unchanged from the old days. So I don't know what their handbooks and their literature is like, but I thought that was interesting. And as I went down that rabbit hole, uh, I was I was amused or surprised to find that if you become an Eagle Scout today, the Navy upon entrance to the Navy, you'll become an E3
Hmm.
automatically, which impresses me as a smart policy on the part of the Navy because if you become an Eagle Scout, jump through all the hoops and get the merit badges and the rest of this that you have to do for it, I mean, you have set yourself apart as somebody who's a self-starter and can do things and learn things and the right kind of stuff, basically. So that's nice if you want to join the Navy to come in as an E3 as opposed to a E1 Swabie. And
Yeah.
I wasn't an Eagle Scout. I'm ashamed to say I was one merit badge short of becoming an Eagle Scout because I joined scouting late, didn't get all my merit badges before I went off to high school, and at that point, I wasn't gonna go
Just didn't
backward.
happen.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. Uh,
Well, I bet you most of the people who are Eagle Scouts are actually on the officer track for the military anyway. Honestly, that's probably where most of them end up.
yeah, same type. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. So anyway,
And what do you think of, as we haven't discussed, this Kevin Warsh character, the presumed future head of the Federal Reserve?
well, there was Kevin Warsh, who is the presumed coming head of the Federal Reserve, and there was another Kevin who was a high up Feddy. But my view is that why didn't they appoint Kevin Costner? Because whoever is going to be the head of the Federal Reserve has got to be a skilled and practiced and enthusiastic liar and doesn't have to know anything about economics. So why not get Kevin Costner and get somebody who can really put forward you know,
Yeah, plus bring some star power to the table.
yeah, exactly. So uh, anyway, whoever is running the Fed, his hands are tied because there's $2 or $3 trillion a year that have to be financed, plus all the shorter term debt that's going to roll over before the year's over. Uh,
Right, I think that number is like 10 trillion this year that has to be refinanced.
yeah, something like that, plus $2 trillion of new debt to finance the government's budget deficits. So I don't know what the Federal Reserve can do about that. They have to buy the debt and print. That's all there is to it. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Trump ought to get. And one thing about Trump is that all the people that he's hired, I think almost all of them, are very presentable. They're they're
Like
they're
Pete
good
Hegseth.
looking. Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's the model. And Pam Bondi and none of these people. I mean, no way would he get somebody like Janet Yellen, who looks like she should have been working in back of a deli counter slicing
or Janet Reno, right? For AG.
who was a, a hardcore bulldog. I mean, there was one joke I really enjoyed when she was in office is because Chelsea, before she got her nose and chin job, uh, was very homely, and so the joke was, who's who's Janet Reno's who's Janet Reno's father? And everybody, well, Bill Clinton. No, 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 no. Who's Chelsea Clinton's father? Well, Bill Clinton. No, it's Janet Reno. No,
Yeah, you can see more resemblance there for sure. Yeah, well, speaking of Pam Bondi, what do you think of, she's gotten a lot of press recently because of her testimony she had to give to Congress, where she was very combative and, defending the administration, I guess, in the wake of the Epstein files.
yeah, I'd say she was a sock puppet, but she's actually an aging Barbie doll. I mean, she really is. And I thought it was so funny that performance when she tried to deflect the conversation from the victims of Epstein to say what we should be talking about is the Dow is at $50,000, and then her talking points included the current S&P and the current Nasdaq. I mean, this is just so shameful that it's actually stupid. Uh, but what I did like, the part I liked about her performance is that she called out these Congress critters and treated them with the respect that they deserve, which is absolutely none, with the exception of Massey, who is perhaps the only decent human being in the House at this point.
Yeah, yeah, it was yeah, online the at least what I saw is that people had pretty negative assessment of her handling of all that. But the next day, Trump, published his Truth Social post, just totally loved it. Said she
Yeah,
crushed everybody there, and she did what was her job, which was by Trump standards, which is to go in there and just attack and insult everybody.
that's right. And her job, as far as he's concerned, is to be a press secretary more than an attorney general. So,
So she's
but
acting more like that because she's doing a lot more press hits than she is indictments. So
yeah. Well, one good thing that can be said about the Trump cabinet, apart from the fact that they're all just shameful sycophants, is that they're all physically very presentable. And well,
typecasted.
yeah, exactly. To give a good impression, regardless of what they do or believe, but at first
Right.
glance, give a good impression.
Yeah, no, totally. I completely agree. Now, what do you think? So I know you've had some time to at least read some accounts of the Epstein release. Like, what's your take on that whole thing at this point, based upon what you've, been able to piece together from various summaries and such?
Well, I have not been a follower as a I mean, I've only absorbed all this Epstein stuff because you can't, we're swimming in a cesspool of Epstein stuff. So how can you not become aware of these things? But I haven't gone down a lot of Epstein rabbit holes. But it's clear to me, for lots of reasons, that Trump is up to his eyeballs in this, having been an old friend of Epstein's and having been a notorious ladies' man in the old days. So it'll all come out. And hopefully, all the redactions, which will, you know, which have been made after they finally said, "Oh, there's no Epstein files," and there's a couple, you know, a couple documents. We'll release them tomorrow, and they're all react. I think when they all come out, assuming they will, Trump is going to be up to his eyeballs, and hopefully hundreds of other scumbags will as well, and it'll be a major scandal that will rock the U.S. and the world, as it is in England with Prince Andrew and other important people in Europe, more than the U.S., oddly enough.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely ties to old Europe for sure. I mean, you've got royalty in there from multiple countries. Obviously, the Rothschild banking dynasty is implicated a couple of times directly, so yeah.
It's too bad that the peasants no longer have torches and pitchforks to take down the Rothschilds and all their all their friends in Europe. That may or may not happen. Probably not. But I,
Probably not.
yeah, can't wait to see what happens. It's one nice reason to be down here in the southern cone of South America, where we're as isolated and insulated from this kind of stuff as you can be anywhere in the world, probably.
Yeah, no, it's definitely nice. Okay, well, let's get to some of these questions, Doug. The first one, he says he has a question about the Deagel report, which we did a podcast on that in 2022, actually, and I think it was our most watched one, well over 1 million views. And then we were just talking about the report, and as he says, in your analysis, you mentioned that you were unsure whether it was a serious forecasting exercise or a demoralization operation. Is He said, now that we're past 2025, what's your current opinion?
Well, the Deagle report, of course, projected that many of the world's countries would be seriously depopulated, like 50% loss of population by about now. Hasn't happened, even with the COVID hysteria followed by the vaccine hysteria. Uh, so I don't know. Was Deagle's timing off, or was it? I don't know. You have an opinion on this? Because
Yeah, I mean, I was suspicious of the report only in that it lacked so much detail. There wasn't, it just, and there's obviously crazy assertions, but, in the wake of everything that happened with COVID, it didn't seem like it was totally impossible, for once. I mean, it would have seemed completely outlandish a few years before that, but in light of what was happening, it did seem like it was possible. And, with the world's still a very chaotic situation, so I think unexpected things could occur, still that drive this. And I wouldn't bet on it for sure, but it's weird that he at least he did indicate directionally through those population statistics, indicated the turmoil the world would be in, I think. And that part is definitely held true, I think. But I don't really have any other thoughts other than that.
well, I buy that. Like Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till it's over, and it ain't over. In fact, it's still warming up for at least the next 3 years while Trump is in office. And I'll just say again, he ain't going to finish out his term. I'll, I'll lay money on that. In fact, I ought to go on one of the betting sites and actually lay some money on that before the odds, you know.
Yeah, before it becomes self-evident, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. If the US dollar loses its global status, will that lead to mass immigration out of the US or a voluntary cessation of immigration into the US? If so, would that scenario be gradual or sudden?
Yeah. Immigration out of the US. Mass immigration? No. To where? To where? Because for what it's worth, the US is still the bastion of Western civilization, where as bad as things are everywhere else, Europe, namely, and Canada, where are you going to go? I mean, mass immigration. I mean, yeah, I think smart people will get a crib in a stable place just in case things go really majorly bad, but bigly bad, I guess I should say, in the era of Trump. But no, that won't happen. And maybe people won't immigrate to the US so much anymore because it's kind of dangerous being a foreigner in the US. You might be rounded up and your papers may not be in order.
Yeah, I'll say that a handful of people here in Brazil I've spoken to over the last day all say first of all, they love the United States. They said they always start off like that. And I don't know if it's just to be polite or whatever, but they start off like that. But all end up talking about how downhill the U.S. is like, and they also have family members that are in the U.S. They lived, these few people I'm talking about lived in the U.S. at one point, and they just see the trajectory it's on, and I think part of that is obviously the immigration crackdown that's occurred recently, but one of the guys I spoke with is real conservative guy, like a huge Bolsonaro supporter. I think would definitely support Trump. And, he was just talking about how things have just gone downhill in the country. He lived there for 19 years. And he was just saying, his brother's still there. And he talks about all the inflation and how much harder it's just to get by at this point than it has been in the past. So it's weird. Like the sense of the few people I've talked to have all universally had this view that the U.S. is going downhill, that they can see it and it worries them.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to agree with them. And what's going to turn it around? It's not going to be Trump's import tariffs for what it's worth. Not that I care about the trade deficit at all, because I have a trade deficit with my local grocery store, a serious trade deficit. It's not really, it's the wrong monitor to look at, but Trump's tariffs, which have created chaos in many ways, the trade deficit is up from what it was a year ago before he put them on. So we've got a headless horseman running the U.S.
Right. Okay. Doug, what are your thoughts on moving or retiring to El Salvador?
Uh, well, having been to El Salvador before Bukele took over, I thought it classified, it was an archetypical shithole, only above Haiti in the Western Hemisphere. But Bukele has apparently turned the place around totally. But I don't think I'd want to. I don't think I'd want to go there because it still has all of. It doesn't have the gangs. You got 60,000 or so gang members locked up in, like chock-a-block, horrible prisons. How long you could keep those people there? Forever? I mean, it seems to me to be a time bomb waiting to go off. And apparently the place is very safe now because of that. And they're keeping the bad guys off the streets. But it's got a very high population, and the sociological problems that resulted in the gangs being created, I don't think have been solved at all that I can tell. So despite the fact that it's the crypto capital of Latin America, I guess they say, no, I would not put El Salvador on my shopping list, but go down and take a look. And listen, I should go down and take a look under the new regime, see if I change
Yeah.
my mind. Well, I don't think so.
It'd be interesting to see it, but it's like the setup is still unstable. It's
Yeah,
new and good, but unstable.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The best place to be in Latin America is the Southern Cone. And that means Argentina under under
Malay.
Milei. Although I understand, I haven't seen this uh, on paper yet, but I've been told that Milei has passed an executive order that says, that if you say anything against Israel or Jews, that you can get up to 12 years in jail. Have you seen that on paper?
I haven't, but I'm going to look it up after the call.
Yeah, it's just at the rumor stage for me, but I understand it's real. That's very disturbing because libertarians don't pass laws about what you can say, even if what you're going to say is hateful, quote unquote.
Or horrible, like totally disgusting by everyone agreeing. It's still it's a statist view. The state should shut you up.
Yeah, so I'm not as happy with Millet as I used to be, but we'll track this down and find out what degree of
Find
truth
out if
is.
it's true. Yeah. Okay. Doug, do you envision a future where people will lease their robot?
Yeah, that's the only way to do a robot because who's going to
No,
maintain it?
oh,
You know,
I thought he meant like lease out your robot.
no, uh, well, it doesn't sound like, I mean, when robots are available, are you going to buy them or lease them?
Yeah, you probably will. You probably actually they probably will be sold on a plan, anyway, for updates and stuff like that. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably the way it will be sold. A monthly subscription.
Yeah, that's the way everything is sold these days, quite frankly, especially I think a really high-tech thing like a robot that
Yeah. Well, it's
unfortunately
okay.
they can shut it down for you at any time if they don't like you. So it's never
Right.
going to probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Technology advances enough, people will be able to, piece them together like a C3PO or something.
It's true. Hack their own robots so that it's actually theirs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get there eventually.
Oh,
Once
soon,
the
soon. I
yeah.
know if we're still doing this in 5 years, uh, there's an excellent chance both you and I will have robots standing at our shoulder.
Yeah, I thought I might have had one by the end of last year, but I'm glad I didn't end up buying one because they're so much better now, and I just would want to make sure I'd get part of those updates. You know, I wouldn't want to, yeah. So, but they look very interesting.
And apparently, there's scores of robot companies in China that are all working as hard as they can to turn out fantastic products that, you know, they'll be indistinguishable from humans before this is over.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the big Chinese New Year. They had a bunch of them, just like they did last year, doing a dance, doing, performing.
Yeah,
And the improvements of them are year over year, and their dexterity and movement it's actually shocking. You're like, is this even real? You watch them do kung fu.
I've seen the robots kung fu fighting with each other. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, it really is. So scary at the same time in the Terminator, future dystopia we're moving into, but you know, also
Oh,
very cool.
Arnold turned into a friendly Terminator in the end. So,
All right, so with the Netherlands introducing 36% tax on unrealized capital gains, how does Doug think this unfolds? Is this the first step towards socialism in Europe? I think we've already had the first step towards socialism in Europe, but
that's in the distant rearview mirror at this point. But
yeah, with
this is
increasing, oh, actually, I think there's more. So with increasing inflation, national debt, unemployment in the U.S., should we watch out for similar policies making their way to the U.S. in the future? If so, how can we prepare?
hmm. Well, it gets down to having a second or third passport and nationality. And listen, why is anybody still living, anybody with any money, I should say, still living in Holland if at the end of year, every year, they assess what you own? I presume it's just stocks, but God forbid it's real estate too, and tax you on the increase in value, which is
Yeah, I
what
mean,
this,
you have to get out at that point if you want to keep your assets more than over a 3-year time horizon, right?
that's right. And don't forget that Ursula, she-wolf of the EU, is from Holland, I believe. She's not a German. That would
Oh,
be
really?
she-wolf of the SS. And this is Ursula, she-wolf of the EU.
Yeah, yeah, it's bad. I mean, that's so destructive. I don't know. I can't even imagine what they're thinking, in doing that. It's so self-destructive.
It's incredibly stupid. So
Well, they're
we're
talking about the same idea of doing something similar, although a lower amount in California.
yes, yeah, and I'm sure that New York will be next with the horrible people that are. Uh, the trend is still in motion, and Trump is not turning it around. In fact, Trump is accelerating it in many ways. People are forgetting that really the only good thing about Trump is that he's a cultural conservative, kind of.
Kind of.
He doesn't, at least in his own mind, he doesn't want to overturn the basis of American civilization. He'd like to
Right.
maintain. he says. I think he
Right,
did.
which after Biden, I mean, I appreciate that,
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Well, he's got some good elements, but
Yeah, it's going the wrong direction. Okay, so next question. What real inroads do you think the US has made on replacing Chinese rare earth processing capability anytime soon for a critical mission application? Or is Trump's and company's effort more like trying to get oil out of Venezuelan tar?
well, I don't have any so-called rare earth plays in my portfolio, and we did have in crisis investing the recommendation on MP, which what did that triple for us back
It,
then?
I think got up, I think 250% I think was, I think the peak.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. But other than that, I don't know of any
Do you,
company.
do you know, but do you think, because they've done a lot of things, made deals, the state has with companies, and, they've announced, the vault and other things, but what do you think on the ground? Has there been anything really done to really shore up those supply chains that you're aware of?
I try to keep up to date on who's digging stuff out of the ground or planning to, and I unaware of anything major that's happened so far.
Yeah, it does take time, though. That's one thing, right? It certainly would take time.
Yeah, it
But
takes years and years and years. And then after you dig up the rare earth, then you got to process it, which of course, as everybody's become aware of the fact, the processing of these things is as much of a bottleneck as finding the deposit and digging it out.
yeah. Okay. Since most Western countries are now very litigious and becoming more so by the day, have Matt or Doug ever been lawfared against? And if so, how were you able to overcome it?
Well, I've been very fortunate because in my entire life so far, I'm proud to say I have never sued anybody or been sued, with the exception of a proxy battle that I was involved in,
Hmm.
which doesn't isn't quite the same thing. So,
Yeah, I got sued once. I would say it was lawfare. Um, I used to have a domain name business where I was buying thousands of domain names every day. And I'd only hold them for a very limited time, sometimes 3 or 4 days, and then I wouldn't own them anymore. It was just kind of this weird loophole in domains years ago. It doesn't exist anymore. But one of the domain names I had owned for 4 days, 3 years prior, I got sued by some, lawyer who did this professionally, basically, out of California, was for violating spam laws. Now, I didn't send any spam, and I didn't even own the domain name during the period in which the spamming occurred. But because I was in the domain's history, I was the only party that could be identified. He sued me. And to what was amazing to me is that you present the information to the judge, you expect him just to like toss it. No, it goes on to more levels. So ultimately, we tracked down the person who did the spam and we deposed them in order to get myself out of the lawsuit.
did
It
they
was
ever compensate you for that good deed or the legal fees that you incurred? Anybody?
nope, nope,
Or,
no. It cost me about 35 grand. I mean, this was a while ago too, so it'd be a lot more money now. But yeah, and it was a huge. It was totally unbelievable. I mean, I didn't have I was no party to it, but I was just drawn into it. So that was one time. I caught that term lawfare didn't exist then, but that's certainly what I'd call it.
yeah, and I wonder with the with AI turning out to be able to do many of the things that lawyers do, uh, the degree that's going to replace lawyers. Although at the same time, there was an article in one of the papers or someplace yesterday that top lawyers are now competing with each other for how much they can charge. We're talking $3,500 or more an hour.
I saw that. I saw that, and that's so funny in the era where you have, the legal costs kind of being pushed down to zero because of AI. but it's all about, the name. You want this guy, and so people will actually pay more. And this is the unique thing, like there's a commodity, law work will get pushed down to zero or close to zero. But then for this name brand stuff that has a human behind it, those prices are probably going to go way higher in that environment, actually.
Yeah, with the bifurcation of society where you have the ultra wealthy, uh, they don't, you really, if you're a multi-billionaire, you actually don't care about thousands of dollars an hour. It's a trivial rounding error, but it's the middle class again that is going to get caught in the vice.
Yeah, and I think about this lawyer in California that sued me. This is what he did. Like this was his job. For on his own behalf, he would sue people like this all the time. That's how he made a great livelihood for himself. And you could imagine with AI though how you could automate that. You could automate these filings, and you can imagine that Lawfare actually will probably explode in this environment.
It's actually worse than that. I'm not talking about lawfare per se now, but it's been alleged that the IRS will be able to assign an AI to every taxpayer. So your all of your financial affairs will be analyzed with an AI, and you'll have to deal with an AI to pay your
With
taxes.
basically a constant digital auditor.
Yeah, I guess that's going to be possible. This is really, really bad news.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
It's logical.
Yeah, it really is. Wow, that's terrible. Okay, next question. Um, if Democrats gain unified control next cycle, would you change your current portfolio allocations in any material way?
Hmm, God. So if the
Maybe getting
communists,
more out of the US. I don't
I
know.
was going to say, if the communists take over the US, do I really want to invest in anything in the US, even though it's still the most relatively free and productive country in the world? It's a real conundrum. It's a real problem.
Yeah, I guess what you worry about is you worry about the legal changes they might make and the wealth seizure stuff that would probably occur. But in terms of set that aside, fundamentally we're betting on, economic realities occurring, so they'll occur under every administration. I mean, the debt is unserviceable. The dollar must be diminished in order to possibly stave off collapse. And in those cases, portfolio works.
Yeah, and maybe people like Peter Diamandis are right that it's going to be so prosperous because of AI and robots and the things that they create that a lot of this will become academic. I don't rule that out.
Yeah, I don't rule
That
that out,
said,
but
that said, I'm not selling my gold anytime soon.
yeah, it's just that in between period where we are today and that period of abundance that is going to be quite brutal no matter what. I mean, just like the Industrial Revolution, right? The people, like, everyone got reoriented at the end of it and was maybe more prosperous afterwards, but there was a lot of destruction in between.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the area we're moving into right now, politically and financially and economically and probably militarily, it would seem right now.
It certainly does. Let's see. Doug, what do you think of seasteading?
Um, I, I'm not crazy about boats. Um, Frankly, I hate the idea of a cruise ship. Maybe I just hate the idea of the kind of people that seem to show up.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I don't know. Look, anything's possible if you have enough capital to make your standard of living what you'd like it to be. But
Yeah, you'll have a major trade deficit though.
yeah, I feel, and I think seasteading is, as it's been tried, is basically you get a sophisticated raft offshore, And I don't know if that sounds to me like a survival type situation.
Yeah,
My
it also, or a prison type of situation.
Oh, that's right, because after a while, whatever Coast Guard is in question sees you floating around out there and decides to round you up, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. There were
And
some people that tried this off the coast of Thailand a few years ago, if you remember, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. And I was marginally involved in kind of a semi-seasteading thing where this was the Republic of Minerva, which was founded off of 100 miles or so, I guess, off of Tonga, where they had these reefs that were above water at low tide. And so they were claimed and became the Republic of Minerva. So that's a whole other story where they minted coins, which were 1 ounce of silver and grains, not grams of gold, with the goddess Minerva on it. It was unique. First gold on silver coin. And I marketed those coins with my friend Bob Kephart. And I wonder what I don't even have one left. I should buy one just for old time's sake because they were so good looking. Republic
yeah,
of $35 coins.
yeah. I'll have to look it up and see if I can find them for sale. All right.
Anyway, yeah, it's it's tough in today's world.
Yeah, although there is a move for these like city-state ideas among the tech guys, like they like this concept and are kind of pushing for it in different ways, where they have different independent governing zones or whatever. Like what's the place in Honduras?
Oh, that's called what is that called?
Starts with an R, doesn't it?
Jesus.
Rotan? No.
No, it's called they've had all kinds of problems with the Honduran government because the previous regime said it was fine, but this regime doesn't like it, so they want to break the deal. I don't know what's happening. I get a blog from them like once a month, and I look at it, and it's uncertain to me what's going on. But they've built a lot of stuff there and everything, so I don't know.
It's possible in the future, but you got to have this powerful state supporting it, or else it won't work.
Yeah, or else have a a private military company that stands at the ready to straighten things out.
Requires a lot of capital to,
Yeah, it does.
to field your own army.
This is a multi-billionaires game.
Yeah. All right, two last questions for you, Doug. Hong Kong is still governed by common law and has been through a process of deflation since 1999 and may likely become a financial center for precious metals in China over the next decade. So, on this basis, and as a former resident, would Doug consider buying property in Hong Kong today?
Well, having lived there for years and experienced a bull market in Hong Kong real estate, fantastic bull market actually. But I'm gone from Hong Kong, and I'm not up to date on what prices of Hong Kong real estate are relative to prices of Shanghai real estate or whatever. Actually, it would have been better if I'd bought something in Macau because that became like gambling central, Las Vegas on steroids. I mean, that would have been a real score.
But you
Don't
did
have.
have a huge score on your Hong Kong real estate, if I
Oh
recall,
yeah,
right?
it went
Yeah.
from $85,000 for a really nice location to I think we sold it for like 1.2 million 10 years later.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah,
And you
from
had a
real
nice place
cheap.
to live the whole time.
Yeah, it was. It was a great deal. I have no idea what that apartment, which is right on the water above we're on the 13th floor above the Hong Kong Yacht Club. So it was a great view of the harbor.
Hmm.
Don't know what it's worth now.
Hmm. All right, last question. So, with the direction the dollar is moving, should we avoid US stocks?
I don't want to be involved in U.S. stocks,
But
frankly.
not for reasons of the dollar, though. There are probably other reasons, right?
Well, I think they're overpriced. By every conventional measure, the U.S. stock market is really overpriced. all that money that's being created by the Fed to finance the deficits has to go someplace. And uh, all that money is making big corporations more profitable than they would be normally. So, yeah, the stock market can go higher or it can crash. I don't know.
But
But
it's expensive now, though. We know that.
anyway, I think that the gold and silver and other mining stocks, by all historical parameters, are very cheap still, and they're going to go a lot higher. And that's the way I'm playing it.
Right.
If
And
you
so,
see what the trend is, the trend's my friend. And I can see the trend on the big stock market, but uh, it's too close to the end of the story as far as I'm concerned.
right. Yeah. And so his question about the dollar moving down, so avoiding stocks. I mean, in fact, the dollar moving down is what has really buoyed stocks, right?
Yes.
US
Yes.
stocks. Yeah. So theoretically, like in Weimar, Germany, right, the stock market went up substantially as they were destroying their currency there. So who knows? We
I'd
could
rather
get,
take it. I'd rather take advantage of it with mining stocks where it's double buoyed by the strength of gold and silver.
and underpriced.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
I'm,
Well, that's
I'm will come to buy ordinary U.S. stocks, but I don't want to. I don't feel like doing it at the end of a 40-year bull market, particularly.
no, seems like bad timing. Okay, well, that's all we have for today, Doug. Thank you very much. And if you want to know, by the way, viewer, want to know about some specific recommendations we have for stocks in the gold, silver, and other resource area, subscribe to Crisis Investing, crisisinvesting.com. That's where we cover that. So, Doug, thank you very much. I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, well, I know you will have a fun weekend up in Sao Paulo, so see you next week when you're back on back on the
Back on the
land.
farm. All right. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.